Just normal, regular.
My
No, that's not regular. That's not regular.
Created.
Can you say my life creative?
My life creative.
You think about the Impressionists and the era under when they were creating, and look at the...
It's the same thing. I'm like, this is going to be an amazingly creative period.
I mean, there's no way that you can not... Crazy. Crazy. I gotta say, Catalina Island just sounds so exotic. Like, it just kind of brings to mind every kind of, wouldn't that be lovely?
And hello and welcome to My Life Creative. I am Richard Zombeck. I'm here with my wife, my partner, my inspiration, my muse, Pamela Joy.
I didn't know I was all those things, but hello.
Well, I know. Well, you know, we all need inspiration for our creativity. And, you know, I mean, we talk about that all the time. So,
yes, we do.
So we are My Life Creative, the show that talks about creativity. And you can find us on the web at mylifecreative.com, where you can find all of our episodes, our archives, and of particular importance, particular importance, you can find out how to support us on Patreon and on iTunes with reviews and ratings. So the interview in this episode is with Kristianne Koch Riddle. And Pamela, why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I would be happy to. I have wanted to talk with her because she lives a lot on a sailboat. And, I mean, our conversation, we talked about places like Catalina Island and the French Polynesia and her sailing, and it was very exotic and interesting and yet really grounded. She is always chasing the unknown and adventure, and I just thought it was really interesting because a lot of her work is kind of art school art, in the sense of really pushing presentation, pushing projects, really approaching projects with an artist's mind in terms of research and how she pieces things together. So I put a lot in the show notes under her show on My Life Creative. I put some of the references to some of the components that she talks about and some of her references, and I found her work very interesting in how she approaches straight photography in non-traditional ways.
All right. Well, let's listen to that interview.
Well, staying on the course of the marina, it's actually because that's kind of where I wanted to start, because so much of your work is tied up into that. I don't know your history with it. Like, did you grow up on a sailboat, or did you grow up with sailing in your home, or... Like, I would love to know more about that.
Well, I grew up in a beach town, but my parents weren't really big beachgoers. So we went to the harbor, and we had a boat. We had a sailboat. I grew up sailing when I was, very, very young. I think we got a boat probably when I was 6.
Wow.
So, I grew up on the water. And my dad was in the Navy, and so he was a navigator, and he was really into boats, and we would just spend our family time at the harbor. And my parents they weren't adventurous. They wouldn't really go anywhere. We would like go to Newport, or, we went to San Diego, which was a 12-hour trip from our harbor, and that was the biggest trip that we did. But we have Catalina Island off of our coastline, and to me that was always the ultimate destination, was to like go sailing to Catalina and drop an anchor and hang out. But we never dropped anchor. We had to go to a dock. He was he played it safe. He had 3 daughters, and he'd been across the Pacific Ocean and it scared him and he knew what could happen. So we enjoyed the life, but we didn't do anything that was risky.
Oh, I gotta say, Catalina Islands just sounds so exotic. Like it just kind of brings to mind every kind of, wouldn't that be lovely?
Yeah, and it's amazing because it still is that way. Like it's right off of Los Angeles, and it's still a place that you can go, and it's rugged, and there's nothing there relative to Southern California.
So it's not habitated, right? It's like just
it is.
Oh, it is.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There are people that live there. There's a town called Avalon. It's a small town. Wow. People live in the town. When I was in high school, I dated a guy that lived over there, and he would commute
by boat
across the water to go to high school. And but most of the island is inhabited. There's not many people compared to, the beach coastline of Southern California that's completely covered with houses. So when you go there, we go. So the ultimate goal for me was to actually sail there. And I didn't get to do that until I was in my 30s after I met my husband, who grew up sailing. And he used to go to Catalina on his boat, his dad's boat, when he was a teenager. And he would operate the boat while all his friends and his older siblings would party and pass out along the way.
Oh, right. So he was actually the designated driver on the water.
Yes. He was a captain. He'd get them there safely, and then they'd have fun over there. So the boat that he grew up on was the boat that we took to Tahiti and sailed around French Polynesia on. So when I was a young girl, my dream was to meet a guy that I could go sailing with. Mm-hmm. And I read the book Dove, and that was about a guy who met a girl and went sailing with her. And it was, just my version of it. So I grew up with that dream of always wanting that adventure in my life. And I grew up in a family of world travelers. So they would travel. My mom traveled and was a tour guide. My grandfather was a tour guide, and they would take people all over the country, all over the world. My grandfather was really into going to Asia, and he went over the Khyber Pass, and he would just travel and meet people, and those people in the area, the local people, would show him the best restaurants and take care of him. And then he would come back to San Clemente, and he'd put a group together and take a group of friends, basically, that paid him to go traveling, and he'd take them on this tour. And my mom spent my childhood doing that, so she wasn't home a lot. So I just grew up in this world of, travel and getting away into, adventurous places. But when I grew up, I wanted to do it my own way. So I didn't do the tour guide thing. I didn't book tours, and I ended up traveling all over Europe with a backpack by myself. Wow. For a couple of months. And I did a lot of mountaineering. So I did a lot of backcountry climbing, and I went to Mexico and climbed the volcanoes.
No kidding.
And they're 19,000 feet. I think the highest one's like 18,800 or something like that. And I did 3 of them right before Christmas. So it was like I did one, and then we took a day off, and then we did the next one, and then we took a day off, and then we did the third one. Yeah, it was pretty gnarly. So we started in Mexico City to acclimatize, and that's like 8,000 feet. And then we went up to, I think we went up to 10 or 12,000 feet was our next base camp. and then we climbed the volcanoes from there. So I was really into these extreme alternative adventures.
And almost the very opposite of the water.
Yeah, it was. It was an escape for me because I grew up at the beach and I grew up in the ocean, and it was so familiar that I wanted to do something else to kind of push my experience, and also just I'm really into experiential education, just, experiencing something completely out of your comfort zone. And since the ocean was just so comfortable and familiar, I wanted to do something totally different. So I did that for a while, and I moved to Colorado, and I worked as a mountaineering guide for the Colorado Outward Bound School.
Oh, wow.
And
I had a friend who went to that. Well, her parents kind of forced her to go, it was the summer to get away from, I think it was instead of like rehab, their way of dealing with it was you're going to go. So of course she smoked right until the day she left. And I think she made it 3 days. She didn't like do her boots. You're supposed to break in your boots. She didn't do that. She didn't really do anything that they told her to do. And then when she got there, it was horrible. She said, all we did was climb mountains. You climb to the top, and then everybody would be cheering, woo! And she just didn't like it. She didn't stay the whole time. It did not work. It wasn't successful. So that's all I knew of Outward Bound. That's funny. You were a person who led them.
Extreme. I think I was 28 as a leader. I was one of the very few women that was selected. The vetting process was very extreme. They dropped us off in the dark, in the snow, and we had to climb over a mountain and get down into the valley by the next day by noon. And there was a team of 5 of us, or 4, and we didn't have any shelter. They gave us very little food, and we had one map. So we had to work together as a team to get to that designated location.
Wow. You thrive on things that would terrify most people, huh?
Yeah, I don't know, not all of, it's like I just really like feeling like I like to have my body feeling taxed. I like that. It makes me feel alive. Like the closest thing I can do now, because of the kids, I won't do that kind of stuff anymore. It's just not worth it since I have someone to come home to.
Yeah.
It changed. I love to go surfing when it's a little bit bigger than my comfort zone, and I like when it's cold because it just makes me feel alive. It's like you have to really be mentally alert, and it wakes up your muscles and it wakes up your mind. So I love that stuff. And I was very cautious and conservative when I was a child. I didn't really do anything extreme when I was young. I wasn't, risk taker. But when I got older, I just really wanted to, experience things.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how did you like photograph or draw or paint or write, or like, did you make things along the way through all of these times, or did all these like experiences just sort of settle in?
So no, all the mountaineering, I carried the same as everyone else, plus my camera equipment and my film. So even when I was climbing, like I climbed the east face of Mount Whitney with a couple of guys, we all split up food and, ropes and all kinds of necessary safety gear. And then I would have my metal Nikon camera body, lens, film, and everything on top of it.
Wow.
And even when I did the Outward Bound, I carried 2 cameras with me. When I did Europe, I carried 2 cameras. I had a Hasselblad with me, and I slept on the train a lot when I did that, and I actually would sleep with all my equipment around my neck. So I just had it all really close. Just carry it the whole time. I carried it the whole time.
Wow.
Never put it down.
And what was your work like during that time? What did you...
Very documentary, you know, very editorial. I always shot with a wide angle lens. Everything was 20 millimeter. When I first started shooting, it was all black and white. I only shot black and white. But when I started doing the travel work, I added color because I wanted to do editorial and commercial work. So, but when I was in school, I graduated BFA in photography, and my work was all black and white and alternative process. So I was shooting things for ideas that I had. It didn't really matter, you know, it wasn't all technically, you know, perfect. It was really just part of the process. So I ended up doing a lot of stuff that was cyanotype, gum bichromate.
I loved gum bichromate.
Yeah. So the process was really important to me. So I did cyanotypes. I actually photographed with a high contrast film, high contrast slide film. And then I transferred the images to litho film that were about 11 by 14 in the darkroom. And then I contact printed the litho film onto cyanotype coated cotton fabric.
Wow.
And then the fabric was hung on a hanger on a rack, and in the gallery it was presented on one of the clothes racks that you can, like a rolling clothes rack. So I had all my images hung on hangers on the clothes rack. So that was...
It's so art school.
So art school, yes. Yes. So all my stuff was that way. It was really, photography was just one of the parts of it. It was really about the idea overall.
No, I identify with that. I did a lot of that in school as well, where it was, you're free to explore and experiment and pretend that you're somebody really important. And,
that, and just you're trying to find, like, what is all this stuff? You're trying to figure out what are the options out there. I loved printmaking. So I did a lot of printmaking, etching and engraving.
Oh, wow.
So it's like you're trying to find your process and, like, what clicks for you.
Well, it's interesting that you would say that you, even with the printing onto the cotton, it's fibrous and it's fluid. Like, I see a lot, I can understand why you would choose some of those things just because it feels like water, right?
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that all of these experiences, all the places you've been, didn't work their way in. There's like a real expressive quality to a lot of your work that just seems like so much of what you've experienced and everything that you've described is kind of works their way into your images.
Yeah, I think like even without being aware of it.
Yeah.
I mean, and just like the family triptychs, you know, it's like
I love them. They're really different than some of your other, I think maybe what people are most familiar with what you do.
Yeah.
They're very well, they have such a deep history in them. The whole, you know, anybody who's studied painting knows the history of those altarpieces and how things are positioned and the importance of who's on the left and who's on the right. And you've kind of reversed some of those things. But they're all very interesting. They're deep with a lot of, like, I read your statement on it, and we'll put a link to it on the write up on My Life Creative. Mm-hmm. But I'd love to know more, like, how they came to be, if they evolved a little bit over time, or if you just said, "Oh, this is what I need to do."
Yeah, it was kind of more like I was working on At the Edge. I had been working on evolving that idea for a long time. It took me years to finally figure out what I was trying to say, and what I was trying to communicate, and then to actually make the commitment to create the images that communicated what I wanted to say. Because a lot of the precursor images to that at the Edge series, I was just standing on the beach, and that just did not communicate what I was trying to say.
Well, it makes sense. You're at the edge of the beach looking out onto the water.
Yeah, and what I was really feeling was that I missed being on the ocean, like on a boat, on the ocean. You know, I was feeling trapped inside the house and feeling trapped on the land. And I think that's what happens to people when you've gone cruising for an extended period of time. You come back and are landlocked. It's really, really hard. Every other cruiser I've ever met has said that, you know, it kind of ruins you. It changes you at a deeper level than.
Well, from just being on the water, like from being when you're not able to be on the water, it's almost like a withdrawal of some sort.
Totally, like a withdrawal, exactly.
Huh. Wow.
Yeah.
Do you think that that has a lot to do with, like, we're made? I mean, I got to go deep for a minute because we're made of water. I mean, we're affected by water and moon and things like that. That do you think that it actually? Oh, I won't even go that deep. But do you think that is it psychologically proven that physical sense happens?
I don't know, but I do know that it was a very being out on the ocean without seeing land for days on end is a very spiritual experience. And I'm already a spiritual person, but not outwardly so. Like I'm not religious. I'm spiritual. But there was nothing that could have prepared me for that, being on the water. I mean, you see things, you hear things. There was a day where my husband and I both knew that my mom was on the boat. We totally believed that she was on the boat. We're in the middle of a storm, and he's like, I swear your mom is on the boat. And I'm like, no way, get out. I thought she was on the boat too. And he's like, do you think that means anything? We're like 2 weeks from land. And I'm like, crap, don't even go there. You know, it was a weird, like, is she still with us?
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, and then you have to have a lot of faith that you're going to be okay, that you're going to get there. We didn't have any way to call and say, hey, we're doing all right. Are we almost there yet?
Right.
Completely on our own with that. So, yeah, I think, you know, there could be something, but we weren't in the water. So I think that's a different thing. You know, it's like, I definitely believe that being a surfer, being someone who gets in the water, there's definitely a really special connection when you're that kind of person. Or even just somebody who, you know, loves to be in the water, whether it's a lake or whatever. If you have that, if you've made that connection already, I don't think it's something that you can be without.
No, I understand it. I grew up in Pennsylvania, so we had a lot of like natural streams and lakes, ponds, and I always loved the ocean. There's just something mystical and enchanting. I don't go in it as much now. It's a little cold here. In fact, it's freezing here. I'll go in it if we go further south, but the sound of it, there's something just very soothing at all times of the year. I mean, I kind of go visit when I can. It's not that far away, but we're not like on it. So I see it usually every morning when I go to my meditation. I go along the water to get there, and it's just beautiful. It sets things in a certain way, it makes you appreciate things. I don't know, the smell. There's just something about it that being landlocked, I was landlocked for 7 years when I lived in the middle of the country. And that has its own charm as well. Like, there's something interesting about just vast, big open plains and clouds and what clouds look like on those big open plains.
Yeah.
But I'm with you on the water thing. I love it. I grew up in it a lot. I was a swimmer and I couldn't not be in it. That today, I don't know. I get very concerned with what's going to happen to our oceans, which I actually would like, as we go along, just kind of tuck that away, because I would like to know your thoughts in terms of how art and statements around water and how you feel maybe your work can have some impact on helping maybe cultivate an audience who might not believe that this is really real. Live here. You're seeing what's happening in your marina, like what you talked about very early on in our conversation about the marina implementing its own rules around things. So, as you go along here, any kind of thoughts you have, I'd love to hear them as well.
Yeah. Well, I have several projects in the works. They just haven't come to fruition. So, but that's one of the things that I feel like I'm not waiting for, but kind of positioning myself for, is being more of a advocate, scientific educator with my work. Whether it's, a lot of the stuff that I have done already, including the triptychs, talks about beliefs and philosophy and that kind of thing. And I'd like to bring more philosophy and scientific awareness into my work, because I'd love to see it be more educational for museums.
Well, before we leave the whole your triptych project, the Age of Enlightenment, why don't you talk a little bit about that in terms of how that we started there? We went to we diverted for a moment, which is cool. But I want to understand how they came to be, and then specifically how you came up with the presentation of them.
Okay. So I was doing the whole water thing, and I just really wanted to do something that started from an idea rather than just a collection of images, which is what a lot of my other work has come from. It's like I started shooting and I started feeling, what I wanted and what I was drawn to, and I would just start kind of piecing images together to make a series, which I think a lot of photographers do. But I wanted to do something that was really just, I have an idea, how do I express it as a photographer? And presentation has always played a huge part. I talked about the cyanotypes, on the hangers, the whole thing. I've done other kind of personal projects. One of them was a couple of gifts that I gave to my husband when we were first dating. And it was more like mixed media and framed, and the frame was really important. And it tends to just be a part of the way I express my work. And for me to just do, straight photography and then frame it and hang it, it's challenging for me. But I've done it that way for so long because with the family and the kids, the time constraints are there. So I really wanted to focus on this project. And I do tend to work in diptychs, and I read something about the Brock family triptych, and I grew up Catholic, and I'm drawn to altar pieces and icons and all that stuff. That's so cool. And Mexico, when I traveled and climbed in Mexico, had an impact on me with that kind of,
Oh, yeah.
you know,
A lot of it
all
there.
that. I love it. I just love
Yeah.
it. It's just so cool. So I wanted to, do something that was an expression of how I was feeling about my son changing.
Yeah, we forgot to mention that you had kids at a certain point here.
Yeah, I had kids, and they just started, the subject matter changed. So I was already working, and I didn't shoot a lot of people, but I wanted to start doing more people, and the kids just opened it up for me. So it made it okay for me to, to start doing portraits. I was a lot more comfortable photographing people. It wasn't really high on my list before. So I started to really explore portraiture, and the Brock family triptych was kind of like the ultimate opening of my heart to do one-on-one portraits of people, which has always been a really difficult thing for me.
Why so?
Well, when I was in school, I was just too shy. There was no way I was going to photograph people. And everyone I went to school with wanted to photograph celebrities. I'm like, you guys are out of your minds.
Yeah.
I would not want to do that. And I, was very environmental. I've always been an environmentalist. I love the Sierra Nevada and Ansel Adams and all of that, that foundation was already there. So that was easier for me. I just was really drawn to it. So the challenge for me has always been people. And so the triptych was kind of a culmination of all these things that I love about photography. And they are completely composited, which I love. I love to do composites. A lot of my work's composited, but a lot of it, I don't want it to look composited, so you can't tell. And I wanted to focus on family, because family is really important to me. And then the core of it was my son turning 8 and the way he was changing and the way he was thinking about things and our expectations of him, and talking to other moms about their child going through the same thing and how they were reacting to it. So I started to, explore more about what happens in the brain, at that time in a person's life.
Really?
And there's the development of reasoning starts about that age. So the ability to reason and the ability to know right from wrong, it's a range, from like 7 to 9. And it's different for everybody, but there's a range. And that was the time period I kind of wanted to talk about. And the choices that, the kids are making and the parents are making, and then I wanted to use symbolism. I absolutely probably my most favorite artist is Bill Viola. And his work has always had a huge impact on me.
I don't think I'm familiar with him. I'll have to look him up.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he does video. So the ultimate would have been to do these as little videos, but cost and everything limited that for me. But yeah, I mean, you'll see a similarity. You definitely will see a similarity in his work and this piece in particular. So that was a big influence, has always been. And I think I didn't think about that when I started these, but it came through for sure, whether I liked it or not. I didn't really notice it right away. So, and then the landscape shots were taken in an area around the home of where each of these children live. So
So when you did the one of you and your husband and your boy, which I assume was your first one, did you set the tripod up and take all of that at once, or did you take him and then you took yourself and then you took your husband?
yeah, everyone is photographed separate. The background is photographed in they're all photographed in 3 different, panoramic angles, and then I piece everything together.
Yeah. No, it's really cool.
Some of them I even add the sky. I mean, they're completely composited. So,
and then the objects that you all have, did your boy pick those, or did you and he and your husband, or how did you decide on the objects?
So the kids each picked their favorite toy, and the one that's been with them the longest and the one that's been the most meaningful for them. Mm-hmm. And then the other objects have been kind of a, input from the parents and ideas from me and things that they felt like connected with them. So they're not exactly, biographical portraits of these people. There is some interpretation for sure. It's not like I'm trying to express that exact family.
Oh, right.
They're representative.
Well, it's an interesting way to think of doing a family portrait that's not lifestyle or a book or the things that I think I've always gravitated towards. It's a very interesting way of creating a fine art portrait of a family at a pivotal time in a very unique way.
Yeah, I wanted it to just be really different than anything else that's been done.
Well, it is. In a good way. No, I really like them.
Thank you.
So the other couple things I wanted to ask is the on board, you did another kind of art process approach with all the individual pictures, but that word wabi-sabi aesthetic. Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think that might kind of fold into the other 2 pictures, perhaps, that, I looked at a lot of your images. I pulled a couple, because a lot of them have a feeling they feel very candid and like they just naturally happened, but at the same time, they also have a quality that feels like a pause, like maybe you had some arrangement to it. So I wanted your thoughts on those kind of, are they planned or stolen or a combination of both, and how that all fits in with the whole wabi-sabi aesthetic, whatever that is.
Okay. So when I was going through the period of, like, I guess it's more discovery of who I am as a person. I mean, this has all gone back over the years of who I am, traveler. I like I like
living on a boat. You would have to, because you don't have a lot of room.
Living on a boat is part of that. Living out of my backpack is part of that. Living on a mountainside is part of that. I'm drawn to that. Just the simplicity of not having a lot of stuff. And the wabi-sabi aesthetic and wabi-sabi is a word that I discovered in a book that I had because I was so into travel. And it was a book called They Have a Word for It, and had all these words from all over the world in different languages that we don't have in English. And I just thought it was amazing. I love language and I love words. And wabi-sabi always stuck with me as being something that I could really relate to. And when I started photographing my kids on the boat, I think it just naturally happened that they were all stolen moments. But when you live on a boat, your life slows down and you do live in the moment. And we did live on the boat for several months as a family when they were very young. And it was similar to what I experienced when I was cruising with my husband, except that we were in a dock versus on, at anchor. And it felt that way. I mean, it just really, it was just in the moment living, and it's austere. Like you don't have much. We just have books on the boat and everything's put away. It's like all the cabinets, the food is stashed in the cabinets, and then you have safety equipment, and you just have the bare minimum of what you absolutely need to survive. And that was what drew me to the mountaineering too. It's just what you need to survive. You don't have any fluff. You don't have any, frivolous things that just aren't really necessary. And so I wanted to express that in the whole project when that came to me. And it came to me again as, I was documenting them and photographing them and starting to piece images together and seeing how that was expressing that lifestyle. So putting them into a book that was very rough and it's like I cut it up and I actually, cut a hole in the pages and stuck the postcards inside there, and they're all kind of loose, and the paper that I printed on was very textured and natural, kind of watercolor paper for the postcards. And I felt like it really expressed what it was like to live on a boat.
So do they pose for you, or do you just catch, or is it a little bit of both?
Nope, there was no posing going on.
No posing, because you catch them in almost like a cinematic moment, right? It feels like I'm looking at the whistling stage. I can't see the, let me see what's the name of it here.
Oh,
floating stage. Sorry.
She's dancing on the deck.
Floating stage and then close quarters were the two. Yeah. So floating stage, it's
she's just dancing. She's doing her ballet.
She's got her little ballet shoes on and her silver dress, which is so funny for being on a boat with a minimal of things you can have. Your little girl decides that she needs to have ballet slippers and a silver dress. That's just brilliant.
She has heels. I have pictures of her in heels on the boat. So she's definitely got her own way of thinking about this boat experience.
And then your boy in the close quarters, I can't tell if he's at the end of the day and that kind of stoned look that kids get when they're so tired from being in the water and in the sun, but they're not tired, right? It's that kind of look of, you really are.
I think they had just had a big fight and they were getting in trouble. And it's pretty indicative of living on a boat in close quarters. There's a lot of personal space issues and
you're on my side.
Yep. So we now have a bigger boat and they each have their own stateroom and everyone's happy. You go to the bow, you go to the stern.
Right. Kind of split them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, let me get to some kind of ending questions because this has all been, let me ask you this before we go there. So we all know that photography takes, if you shoot film, you end up with a lot of stuff, right? You end up with negatives and contact sheets and bad prints or test prints, whatever. What do you do with all that stuff? Do you store it? Do you throw it? I mean, you keep your negatives, obviously, or do you scan them and retain a digital archive?
I have a digital archive of everything, but the stuff that was all shot film, I still have all the film. I have the negs and I have the slides. I used to shoot a ton of slide film. So I keep that, but I don't have any organization process for that. So everything is scanned in and then it's brought into Lightroom and database that way. And my Lightroom catalog is folders of ideas. So every image that could fit into an idea that I have, I put it in there. So I have a lot more ideas than I have finished projects.
I understand. But that's interesting because it does, sometimes I've been reading a lot and watching a lot about minimalism because stuff makes me crazy. And the happiest times were the times when I had very little stuff. And I can get rid of things. I don't have a lot of problems with it. I'm perpetually just, but it feels of late, I feel very cluttered. And I have let go of and let go of and let go of, but it's things like cards. I sometimes wonder, am I going to regret throwing all this stuff away someday? Or, the box of things maybe my mom gave to me. I really don't care. I've never looked through them. It just feels like a big box of burden to hold on to. But, I did chuck at one point, I chucked all of my notes from college, my art history notes and everything else. Cause I thought, okay, it's been a decade. You've never looked at it. I'm going to tell you, the minute I got rid of it, I regretted it. I'm like, I won't even say how much I owe in student loans, but was like the bulk of it. And I wish I had all those notes. That's what I paid for. All of my, if all the things to get rid of, that was a stupid thing. But if I had kept them, so it's just this ongoing, how do you deal with that? Do you have that even? Do you go back and forth in your head? Do I keep it? Do I let go of it?
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, it's daily. Yes, it's daily. And it's for me, it's all the stuff that I've acquired. It's all the stuff that my husband's acquired because he's an artist too. It's all my kids' artwork and their writings. Yeah. And then I live in my grandparents' house. And a lot of their stuff is still here. So I have a lot of vintage, stuff that I inherited that I don't really, I love it. So I photograph it and then I let it go. I have an Etsy site and I'm selling things and it makes me happy to think that they have a new home and that I can move on.
Well, that's a nice way of looking at it.
Yeah. So I document it and then I have a picture of it. I'm like, oh, that's so nice.
That's not here anymore.
And it's just, when you see it, it brings back the memory of it. Just like my photographs of my kids when they were babies, go back through those. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that. I'm so glad that I have as many pictures as I have of them.
That's a great way of looking at it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I saved their artwork, just the stuff that is really unique and special. They each have a portfolio. I saved their writing that is kind of milestone writing, that's something that's like, wow, they did that when they were only 4. Like my son, when he was 4, he made a movie, Wow. I mean, there's certain things that are just like, you need to hang on to, yeah. But the rest of it, I've let go. I let go of my darkroom finally. I gave that away and it felt really good because I know I'm not going to do any more silver gelatin work. If I do anything, it's going to be alternative. It's going to be, I have a contact printing table that I built with UV lights in it. So if I do anything, it'll be something with that. But
well, that brings to like some kind of ending questions I usually ask. Have there been any experiences which drained or upset you? And then how do you deal with kind of the disappointments or setbacks or competition or social media, the pressure, the blogging? I mean, we're inundated. It's intense today. There's so much coming at you in every which way all the time. How do you stay sane through it all? And then, deal with those moments of, what the hell? Or do you not have those moments? Or how do you deal with all those things?
Well, I have those moments, and most of it comes from social media and the environment that we have now. When I was an artist creating without all of that, it was clear, I was honest, it was authentic. So I had to learn to let that go. Probably one of my biggest disappointments was being intimidated by another photographer who was threatening me to stop my work because she was doing the same thing. So, and it was the only reason that would happen was because she was popular, and social media spreads that so quickly. And I'd been doing my work already for a long time. And she didn't like that she, I don't know, ended up choosing the same thing as me. And I don't know if she was copying, if she was inspired by it. That would have been nice for her to say, I'm really inspired by your work, rather than, can you please stop making the work that you're making? So that was a huge thing for me to have to work through. But I also know that everyone's got their own demons and they have things that they're dealing with. And I think what it did for me was just it was just a reminder that I'm so much happier just kind of doing my work the way I like to do it without seeing what other people are doing. I'm completely not influenced by trends. I feel like a lot of the times I'm not in the loop socially. In the social media, I don't really always fit in. I'm doing something that isn't trendy. It isn't. A lot of times I just feel a little awkward.
No, I understand. I understand from the sense of, in art school, I had ideas taken from me, literally. And my senior thesis idea, somebody did, but 2 weeks before mine was to be presented. And I know that the professor actually told the person my idea because it was executed. I mean, what do you do with that? I was livid. Yeah. I was hurt. I was also felt complimented. Like, it was very confusing. And, just roll in the whole, I had so much arrogance going on in college that, my head was way far up places it should not have been. But from that, it evolved into a whole different place. And the angriest I've gotten now, because I had a kind of a stalker that I felt locally, that literally places that I went to, I would see the same picture, the same angle, the same place, and they're way more popular in my area than I am. And, they play a game in a different way. And it's really made me so angry for so long that I disconnected from all of it for a while. And last year, I find myself coming back to very similar scenes over and over. And it's a big, vast, open scene with very little going on in it. And I like them. Mm-hmm. They make me happy. And that's all that matters. They make me happy. So I do not fit into, I don't have kids. So I don't have, I think when I've grown tremendously is when I've been able to work frequently with people. But it's an excuse. It's an internal, like, I'm starting to own my own excuses and my own hang-ups and my own things. But I do find the happiest times, honestly, is when I just stay off, because it's a circular, it's a great thing. And if you've timed things, I'm so happy when things pop for other people and they get recognized. And I don't fit. I understand. So awkward. I get it. I feel right there with you in so many ways.
And I've never been, the popular. That's just not me. It's like I'm more into integrity and just doing what's good for me. And I've never been in this to be famous or to be popular or to be, go down in history. I mean, I do photography because I just love the medium and I love the history of it. I mean, I've studied the history of it. I love to learn about the processes, and I just really, really love it. So it just keeps me going. I mean, I've been doing it for 30 plus years,
long time.
and you have to kind of reinvent the medium for yourself over and over again for you to, keep the passion for it. I've gotten very discouraged many times where it's like, I'm done. I am never doing photography again. And then it comes right back in even stronger. And then I end up finding a whole new way of expressing myself and even finding more about myself. So I love the medium, and I love meeting other people who are passionate about it. I love collaborating with others, even in the commercial aspect of it when I do commercial projects. I love working with art directors. I love working with stylists and collaborating and having those parameters put on me.
That's so interesting. That would scare the crap out of me that for somebody who shied away from photographing celebrities, that you're good with the collaboration, because that's a very commercial is a very I don't know. I would be terrified.
It used to be very terrifying, and I've done so many wonderful projects that were actually challenging that really pushed my communication skills, and it pushed my technical skills, and other parts of me that I wouldn't normally. I was out of my comfort zone, that I actually am really drawn to it. And I it really, truly, honestly enjoy working with other people and trying to give them what they're looking for. They have an idea, and it's either, the editor or the marketing director for a corporation, or it's an art director with an ad agency, and they have this idea, but they're like, I need you to bring something to it. And that's what I love. It's like, I can do that. I have a vision for this, and I have an idea of what I can contribute. And then I have other people say, well, this is what I think. And we all kind of put our 2 cents in, and then it makes the whole project and campaign even better. So I've come to really enjoy the process a lot.
So on a closing note, what would you say to people if they're in a place where maybe they don't feel that they know what they're doing, or I'm really not creative, or I can't compete with this, or I'm never going to be like this? What would you say to people? Or say the opposite end of the spectrum, say that they're really in a good place. What's kind of your little mantra, or how do you keep yourself going?
Well, I've been recently working on how I get to plateaus and then kind of disappear for a while. It's like I feel like I reach this pinnacle of, my expectations. I'm like, oh my gosh, I really accomplished what I had dreamed of. And then, I'm there, and then I'm like, now what? And I've started to understand that it's such an important part of the process to feel like you're creating exactly what you want to create, and everything is going really well, and it's just amazing, and then it's not. I mean, it's like I was picturing, the waves in the ocean when you're out on a boat. I mean, there's the crest and there's the trough, and it seems so cliche, but you literally have to go through that to keep appreciating both sides of it, right? So there's no way that you can maintain a career in photography, or even just a passionate interest in photography, if it's just always happy and everything's great, everything's wonderful, it's all going your way,
Right,
you know,
right.
how do you maintain that? That becomes the new norm. That becomes the new boring. And then you have to push it to the next level above that. Like, how is that even possible? So then to have some downtime and some time where you're questioning yourself, you're questioning your abilities, you're questioning your, your validity as actually being an artist or someone who creates, it's a really important part of it. And it's a really important time, and you have to just sit in that moment and be in it to really appreciate how important it is to the whole process. So I think if you're starting out, you're going to start out in the trough and you're going to climb, up to that point where you need to at least set a vision for yourself of where, what your expectations are of where you want to go with it. And every time you climb back out of the trough, your expectations are going to be higher and higher each time.
That's
and allow yourself to have those higher expectations and allow yourself to believe that you can achieve them. So I think that I'm still learning that.
No, I understand.
It's a great thing. I mean, it's like, I just couldn't imagine being in a career that is like, okay, I've done it all. I'm bored now.
Right,
I mean, it just doesn't happen.
No, it's constantly unfolding and reinventing. Yeah.
And the technology keeps changing, and the process keeps changing, and there's so many new people inspiring, the medium, and keep changing the rules, and it's really great.
Yeah, I agree. It's an exciting time in more ways than we'd like it to be, maybe.
Yes.
This has been another episode of My Life Creative with Richard Zombeck and Pamela Joy. You can find us online at mylifecreative.com, where you'll find more information about us, our guests, and while you're there, please consider supporting the show to help us produce more content like this.
Oh yeah, can you feel it? Just over the credits, just riffing now. Words and chords. Not the poetry and the real thing, but not bad for an ad-lib. Not good, but... And it's not long enough, so just do a little bit more. And that's nearly done. That's the final credit there. That's the end.